B'Shem Hashem, B'Shem Yegin Shirter, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rav Yaakov Smith Shlita on Dine Talis She'ula Le'in Chiyuva B'Chasa, the bar Talis. To have the great chesed sponsoring a shir called Yegin Shirter at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rav Smith.
This past Pesach, someone asked me to Shaila, the second day Yom Tov, and as it is in shul, you come to shul, people put their talisim on the table from yesterday, they don't want to fold it up and put it away. So there's a bunch of talisim on the table. He picked up the wrong one, made a bracha on it, and realized it wasn't his talis. So he wanted to know, first of all, could he continue davening with it? It's not his, he has no reshus. Was the bracha levatala because it wasn't his talis? Should he make a new bracha? And the embassy once had a shaila, someone Milo Yom Kippur, he realized during Shemona Esrei that he was wearing someone else's talis. Went out to the bathroom before Ne'ilah, and it swapped. And the question is there a problem with that mitzvah? We had a shaila with a bacha during the summer, the camp. Talis cotton became puzzle. He was playing ball, whatever. I told him, borrow a talis from a friend of yours, but make sure you coin it amanas lahausa. He looked at me like I was strange. This is not dalaminim. Was amanas lahausa for anything? And one more shaila for now. Purim, this is a common shaila. The Baruch want to have a different type of costume. So they rented a tuxedo. A tuxedo is something like today's frocks, kapota. It has dollar convoys, but obviously there's no tzitzis. Is there any heter to wear a tuxedo or any dollar convoys without tzitzis? It was just the shem of a costume. So this and more are really part of a beautiful sugya. There's 3 different gemaras. It's a full sugya. Because if you notice, the common denominator of all the questions is the following. We know dalet minim, to be yoitz on the first day, it has to be lochem, it has to be yours. So if you took someone else's, you're not yoitza. The question is, does that apply to the mitzvah of tzitzis? And I must mention once and for all, we talk about tzitzis, there's no difference talis gadol or talis katan. If tzitzis has to be yours, then a talis katan also has to be yours. But the question mi'idach gisa is, by dalet minim it says, lakachtem lachem. There's no such pasuk regarding tzitzis. So you can't make a b'chiyav without a source. So the emphasis, the first mention of this concept is Gemara Menachos of Mem Daled, Talis She'ula, a bar talis, Kol Shloishim Yoim, Petur min HaTzitzis. Bikan ve'elech, Chayavos. Now here we see what we're looking for without a reason or a source. Here the Gemara said that talis has to be lachem, not lachem, but it doesn't say the word lachem, but it has to be yours, and if not, there's no mitzvah. But the strange thing is, number one, there's no reason for this. Doesn't seem to mention a source. Number two, more importantly, here it makes a difference 30 days or not. Why, if you have to be yours, why is it difference 30 days? Now we know by mezuzah, there's a patur 30 days, but a totally different reason. That is because you might move out, you might not stay there. But Lamaisa, here we see, and we have 2 questions. Number one, why is it takapata toich lamid? And why is achal lamid more v'chiyav? So the second Gemara that we're going to mention is in Chul and Avkuf Lamed Vav. The Gemara is on a pasuk, Gedilim tasalach al arba kanvais ksuscha. Zog the Gemara, the word ksuscha implies it has to be yours, and that's why a talis she'ula is pata toich lamid. We don't yet see what's the difference, 30 or more than 30. So this is the third source in Chul and Kuf Yud Amabeis and Talis. Talis says that really midaraisa yapata from tzitzis forever, ashula. But more than 30 days, nearest kishaloi, it looks like yours. People think he's wearing this a long time. What's with the mitzvah tzitzis? So it seems to be a form of a maris ayin. When you wear tzitzis a beged a few days without tzitzis, no nishkeferlich. But more than 30 days is going too far. So here we have exactly what we're looking for. We have the din of tzitzis, talis cotton, and gadol has to be yours, not lochem, but ksuscha. More than 30 days, even a talis shula is going to be puzzle. And this is all in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Yudal, sorry, Chayim. Sif Yudal, Siman Yudalid, Sif Gimel, and Lamaisa, this is Klar. Now, another question that we have to add is how about if you rent something for less than 30 days? A perfect example would be our tuxedo shaila. They didn't buy it, they didn't borrow it, they rented it. So we do know in certain halachas shacharis is kanya, but says the Mishnah Berurah and Sif Cotton Yud, he quotes many poskim, and I saw even more than what Mishnah Berurah quotes, that in this regard, if it's not yours, it's not ksuscha, a rental is potter. Now Mishnah Berurah does bring the itter is mistapik, but if you look in Tila David, Sif Cotton Hay, he proves, and that's the maskanas of the Mishnah Berurah, that not only is a talis she'ula potter, but even a talis schura, a rented talis is potter as well. Now, Lamaisa, we have to ask an important question, and basically the question is as follows. Let's say I have a beged she'ula. Let's say I have this tuxedo. Or I borrow someone's dollar convoys, but no tzitzis, right? Talis she'ula means you borrow the beged. Don't forget, we teach the word talis, we think about a talis gadol or talis cotton. That's not correct. In the Mishnah and Gemara terminology, the word talis is a cloak. Shnayim oichzim b'talis does not mean they're fighting about a talis gadol. So the halacha we're talking about now is you borrow a talis, a beged of dalit kanfais. It could be a frock, it could be a tuxedo. So you're potter. So theoretically, a person that borrows again a tuxedo or frocks could wear it up to 30 days with no tzitzis. Now today the frocks it's rounded off, so you don't have four corners. But no doubt a borrowed frock or the tuxedo is potter from tzitzis. Now let's say I decide chacham leiv yikach mitzvahs. I decide I'm going to put on the tzitzis anyhow. I can wear this frock without tzitzis, but I want to be a little strange. I put on tzitzis on this beged. Can I make a bracha on this frock? Again, it's real dal kanfais, real tzitzis, but it's borrowed. So try to jog your memory. Where do we have something like this that the pasuk says you're potter, and I do it anyhow? Can I make a bracha when I'm really not chayiv? So you know what came to my mind? Nashim b'mitzvah seishin man grama. They're potter from sukkah. It's a pasuk, lulav, shayfa, and yet, as we know, the minig roiv Yisrael that when women do these mitzvahs, they're allowed to make a bracha. Now, of course, the sheet of the Rambam is that they can't make a bracha because you can't say v'tzivanu. An isha cannot say v'tzivanu on the leisha basukah. They have no chiyuv. But the benu tam, and that's the minig of probably Roiv Klal Yisrael, that we could make the bracha, a woman do make a bracha. I v'tzivanu, teretz is that it's not going on me. Tzivanu is not going on the Isha or me particularly, it's going on Klal Yisrael. So Klal Yisrael has a mitzvah leisha basukah. And that's why the Svardim and some Briska follow the Rambam Shita, and Nashim will not make a bracha on Zman Gram, even though they're doing it. Ain't a mitzvah, so they get a mitzvah, a smaller mitzvah, but there's no bracha. But minik roiv Yisrael, you make a bracha. Now, oy bazo, you have a great idea. Chacham lev yikach mitzvahs. I'll put on tzitzis on the beged anyhow. I can even make a bracha. True or false? Now again, this particular shah is not negeya, but this is negeya for the rest of the shia. The rayim, the concept of it. Comes again Toisvis of an art, and the Rosh in Chul and Perik Ches Simon Chavav says the exact same thing. He says no, the Dimyan is not correct. But listen to a beautiful lamdis. If an Isha says v'tivanu, it's perfectly true. The Baruch Shem commanded us to sit in the sukkah. Not me, Isha particularly, but everybody else. But there's no such mitzvah to put tzitzis on a beged shula. The pasuk says ksuscha. So how can you say v'tivanu? There's no such mitzvah. And therefore Talis says, even if you want to put on tzitzis on your beged shula, no bracha is said. Yet the pella is, both Talis and the Rosh, after they convince us that no bracha is said, they both say the same lashon. Mikol makom hamavarech afal pikein hamavarech loy hifsid. You're allowed to make a bracha. So the question is, you just proved it that it doesn't make sense with tzivanu because there is no such mitzvah. So what are you saying now? Hamavarech loy hifsid. Teretz, you think about it, it's very simple. Because lamaisa, you're right. There's no mitzvah of beged shula, but for the bailim who owns that frak, what is a mitzvah? So there is a mitzvah in this very context, albeit for the bailim. So I'm saying v'tzivanu for the bailim. So this simple shaila of making a bracha on Talis she'ula, Talis and the Rosh hold you shouldn't, but if you do it, lo yihifsid. And this is all in Shulchan Aruch Siv Gimel. Hashoyel michaveroi Talis she'eina mitzuyet says, don't forget, Talis means a dalet kamfais garment without tzitzis. Petura milahatel but tzitzis. Why? D'chsiv ksuscha. Zok the Mishnah Magen Avram and the Mishnah Berurah that if you even want, you could put on tzitzis and mevarich lo hifsid. So in other words, they didn't reject it, like don't make a bracha. They said if you want to make a bracha, lo hifsid. So again, what's important to me is this yisoid, that even though you're potter from tzitzis because of beged she'ula, if you choose to wear that beged she'ula, you're ein mitzvah v'oisa. If you choose to make a bracha, we don't advise it, but if you do make a bracha, hamavarech lo yihifsid. But again, the word asher kedeshanu b'mitzvah is beautiful. The only question is, does the word v'tzivanu, is that true or not? And here we have hamavarech lo yihifsid. Now, according to this analysis, for a Svardi who follows the Rambam, and that noshim, even noshim don't make a bracha on lulav, shayfa, and sukkah. You look in Siman Yudzayim regarding tzitzis, and Siman Tavkuf Peites regarding shayfa. So if they don't make noshim don't make a bracha on zman gram mitzvahs, so of course those that follow that minig, the men should not make a bracha on a talis she'ula, even though you put it on. Okay. Now, before we apply this more specifically, I will ask you one more common shaila, and that is, let's say a person comes to shul in the morning, and this is Negeya, weekday or Shabbos. He was pushed, he was late, he was rushing to shul. He gets to shul, he left his house in the house, so he's late enough as it. He can't go home and get it. What do you do if you have no talis gadol for shacharis? Shabbos, it was a bad weather. He doesn't want to go to regular shul. He comes to a new shul. There's no talis. He doesn't have a talis. How does he wear a talis? Or he has a simcha, bekitza, he needs a talis gadol that he doesn't have. So the question is there anything wrong if he goes over to someone that he knows? And I should mention, make sure he's not a mafunik, but would you mind if I borrow your talis? He says, mind? I'm very happy. Take my talis, put it back when you finish. It's a great schus. Question, is anything problematic about that exchange? Now he has this has your talis with rishus, b'tshuas chein. Anything wrong with him making a bracha on it? So you think, what's wrong? It's a kasher tzitzis. What's wrong? A lot's wrong. He said, I'd like to borrow your talis. So your talis is a talis she'ula. So there's no mitzvah. And if he follows the Rambam, he can make a bracha on it. Isn't that the same thing? And that l'chara seems to be correct. However, the same Rosh says, linera, that when is there a problem, like the Gemara says, he borrows a talis. Talis means talis she'ena mitzuyetzes. He borrows our kamfos. But if you borrow talis mitzuyetzes, every talis that we have, talis mitzuyetzes, zok the Rosh, you're allowed to be yoytz the mitzvah with it, and even make a bracha. Why? He said, Lamaisa, I would like to borrow it, zok the Rosh, but if you know, you the Bailam know that he wants to make a bracha and do a mitzvah, then you can't just give it to him b'torah she'ela, because there's no mitzvah. So there's an to you gave it b'torahs matana mas lahachzir, and therefore it's his. If it's his, you can make a bracha. And the Rosh has a raya. The Gemara in Vaikot and Chavav Mebeis says if someone borrows a cholok, a beggar, nothing to do with tzitzis, and Nebuch, he found out his father was passed away, So you can't rise kriya on the beggar. He was given it to wear. Teretz says, yeah, given it to wear, but not to rise kriya. But let's say he said, he's going to visit his father who's deathly ill. Can I borrow your beggar? So you understand that he might need it. Then he's allowed to make kriya. What do we see? If it's understood what he needs it, it's like he gave it to him. So the Rosh, who had in here? If you borrow Talis Gadol to be to the mitzvah, not just to put her on for a half a moment for an aliyah, you need a mitzvah. There's an automatic umdana, automatic amanas lahachzir, and guess what? We're back to dalad minim. Just like the Welt knows that the first day has to be lachem, so how could you be yoytze taking someone else's dalad minim? The Teretz says, Adrab, since it has to be lachem, there's an umdana you gave it b'toiras amanas lahachzir, and who adin our very case. So now we have basically two concepts. Talis she'eina mitzuyetzes is potter. We said you could be a eina mitzvah oisa, make a bracha, maybe. Fine. Talis mitzuyetzes, if you borrow it, l'shem mitzvah, it's yours. Make a bracha, it is yours. And that's the mechaba in the end of Siv Gimel. Shala kashim mitzuyetzes, mevorach aleha miyad. Now let's apply this l'mais, and I'll ask you two questions again that crystallize the point even more. Let's say you know someone, interesting fellow, he has a frak, like a potter we used to call it, now I call it frak, and it has dollar convoys, and he didn't round it up, he put on tzitzis on them. He wants to raise a lot of money on Purim, he goes around with a frak with tzitzis, you make a lot of money. A few years he did this mitzvah, he did this collecting and made money, but they got burnt out. So you want to borrow it from him, and this year you want to collect with the frak, with tzitzis. It's a novelty. Fine. So he says, but you want to borrow from Purim? Here, I'm giving it to you. Fine. You have a little of an interesting mishigas by mincha. You want to wear the frak l'shem mitzvah, and you put on the frak. You want to make a bracha on the frak, and it's perfect. Dalakam boys, perfect tzitzis. Can you make a bracha on it? So I mean, why not? This is talis mitzuyetzes. I'll tell you why not. Because you told him you want to make money with his funny costume. You didn't tell him that you want to make a bracha on it. Did he give it to you amanas lahachzir like he gave a talis in the morning? Did he give you like dalad minim? Zok tetaz, sivkot and dalad. When this trick amanas lahachzir is an automatic umdana? When he knows that you wanted l'shem mitzvah. Now he doesn't give that mashal because it didn't exist. But this I think is a beautiful mashal. But let me give you a better mashal and much more practical. Let's say got an Eretz Yisrael, it's much more common because in Chutz La'aretz we don't duchen that often, so everything is done a little more with more foresight. But let's say a person they're about to call kahanim for duchening, and this kohen is running up to the duchen. He has no talis. He goes, "Can I borrow your talis?" He said, "Sure." You give him the talis. Okay. Now you don't know how firm he is. This bracha makes a bracha on the talis before he duchens. We'll soon see if that's ois gehalten in the holidays, but he makes a bracha. Can that bracha make a bracha on the talis before he duchens? Hopefully there's no tircha the ציבור waiting for him. So here, this is the same problem. Because you didn't know that he's from to make a bracha on a talis l'shem duchening. So you didn't give it to him l'shem mitzvah. You gave it to him l'shem k'vayt ציבור. And indeed, the bracha cannot make a bracha. So we have the following, that decide that l'mais you have to know why you're giving it. But it is much healthier if whenever you need a talis gadol, you ask the person, can you give it to him as lahachzir? Don't say, I'm borrowing it, I would take it. That's a much better approach. But now let's apply this more specifically. First of all, when someone needs a talis gadol for davening, as we said, so you might take the easy way out and say, you know what, I'm going to wear it, I'm not going to be kind it, I'm not going to ask him, I'll just wear it, it looks good. That's foolish. Because you can be davening without the mitzvah of tzitzis. Now, lemaisa, it's better to get the mitzvah. Now, how do you do that? So that we saw. You go over to someone that owns a talis. Again, it's important today. Very many people are mafunik. They don't like others wearing their talis. Don't put him on the spot. Say, listen, I understand if not, but are you mafunik at all? If his reaction is like, nah, don't worry. Take the talis. Let him give it to you. Amanas lahachzir. And then it's ksuscha. If he just says, can I borrow the talis? Then you're running into problem. If you say, I'm borrowing the talis, you're running into a problem. You have to come on to the umdana. Now, The question is that bothered me personally. I still don't have a teretz. The Rosh is telling us a yisoid or a fact, and I'll explain. Ask the next 10 people, not big Talmidei Chacham, next average people. Do you know that when someone borrows your talis, he has to borrow it amanas lahachzir? So some people might look at you like you're confusing talis with dalaminim. But is that common knowledge? The Rosh is based on a yisoid that when you need a talis, you and the person know that you have to be koyin it with the kinyan gom amanas lahachzir. Is that fact or totally in a metzias? I don't know if that's the metzias or not. If it's not, then you can't make an umdana if there's no umdana. So that's why, again, it's much better off to say, I need a talis l'shem mitzvah. Can you give it me amanas lahachzir? Now he might start to get a little suspicious that you're being too aggressive. You want my talis? I should give it to you? Tell him it's just for the hour or so. I'll give it back to you. But the Maisa, the Mishnah Berurah does quote a Taz for a different reason. Taz and Yam Shloimeh for a different reason. They're not too happy with this umdana. In other words, you took it to wear tzitzis, to wear talis. But who said the umdana is that he's giving them an asla? So it's much healthier and much smarter to speak out to Farish. I'd like to borrow your talis. Can you give them an asla? The person understands. Fine. Why is they bezam astam? Why am I going to give you my tzitzis? Forget this. Forget the Yam Shloimeh has another taina. Tzitzis is not a mitzvah chiyuvis like kriya. It's a mitzvah chiyuvis. So if you can't do it, you can't do it. Now, lemaisa, let's say you borrowed someone's talis and you've got to speak it out. Afterwards, you go back to him. You shouldn't do this. That causes nervin. He says, by the way, when you gave me talis, did you give me amanas lahachzir? He goes, not me. Never heard of that. So you feel terrible. Is there any way to salvage your mitzvah and your bracha? So remember, we always have the emergency hatch called the Rosh and Tosfos, that even if it's a beged she'ula, but it's not worse than a ein mitzvah oisa, and you have that, what to fall back onto. But why do things as a b'diavad? Again, the way the Birchas Habayis says, say, please give it to me, don't lend it to me. Again, he might get a little suspicious. Explain it. It won't cost him much. Don't worry. What's Pashat Kipshute? And this happens in the camp quite often. They have the Bacham's tzitzis tear. They have no other pair of tzitzis. We tell them borrow from a roommate, from a chavrusa, but make it amanas lahachzir. Don't forget. Otherwise, you don't have a mitzvah. Next group of questions is the well-known, beloved Talis Shel Kahol. How did that fit into the big picture? Because the chayra, the fact that it belongs to a tzibur of 100 people makes it 100 people, but not me. So if Talis Shul doesn't work, why is Talis Kahol any better? It should be worse. So the makar of Talis Kahol is not a Gemara, it's the Rishonim, the Mordechai and Los Katanis, Siman Tov, Saf, Kuf, Nun, the end of Masechta Menachos. He's going on the concept that a beged shel shutfim is chayiv and tzitz. Now, let's say two people old and beged. In the olden days when there was poverty, it was common. They shared a talis gadol. You daven 7 million, I daven 8 million, and shalom al Yisrael. Talis shel shutfis is chayiv in tzitzis. What's the assumption? Because I'm a bailim and you're a bailim. Zok to Mordechai. Therefore, mikan raya the talis shel kahol shechayiv b'tzitzis. In other words, and you can make a bracha on talis shel kahol. The shutf is chayiv, and therefore b'tzarich bracha. So the Lachzkan is saying something very briefly, but very, very important, that a talis shel kahol is like a talis of shutfis, which means we all own it. V'ani b'saycha. So now it is in fact my talis. Now lamaisa hagufa. How does that work? If so many other people own it, so the teretz has to be as long as you have a bailis, you're fine. So it's not any different than talis shel shutvis, and taka, the halacha is you make a bracha on a talis shel shutvis. Now, the talis shutvis is like a cup. The problem is if you have a big kehila, a few hundred members, so there's no way that each has a shavapruta of bailis. So how does it work? But I'll ask you a much more simple question. You usually daven in shul Pliny. This Shabbat, there was a big storm, a lot of snow, you can't walk there, you daven in shul Almighty. You walk in, and you say, can I have a talis? Sure, we have a special talis for all our guests, here it is. Question. If the Torah, the mitzvah of Talis alcohol is that you're a member and you have a bailis, you're not a member. You have no mamonis here. So this is probably why the Derech Chaim, who lived many days after the Lachs Ketanos, in Dinei Tzitzish She'asu Akam Siv Gimel, he says you make a bracha on Talis alcohol, and he gives a new reason. And the reason is that a Talis alcohol was donated and is maintained because anybody that needs a Talis in this shul, we are user friendly, you have it. So therefore, the person donated it, and the shul keeps it up, so you should have a Talis when you need it. Zok to be halacha in the Maskil She'ela, why did the Derech Chaim have to add to Rishonim? The Rishonim say Shutvis, that's a good reason. Why do you need a new reason? Zok to be halacha, beautiful. Because let's say you have a big kehila, and there's no Shava Pruta for each person, then it doesn't work. But if the svara is, we want you to have it when you need it, so if you need it now, it is yours. Maybe kulay shaloi, because it's now yours. Now, the second nafkamina does not say in bialacha, but it's pasht l'chayr, that if you walk into a shul that you have no financial obligation to it, you're not a member, it wouldn't be a shutvis, but it would be the same yisoid and taka shuls. I saw someone told me in a shul that he went into recently, there's lettering that was added to the talis. It cost them a few dollars, got it, they had to write it out. Mutta levorech al talazeh. This is a called talis. It becomes a mamish, a talis that belongs to the one that uses it. So it could be today Yankel and tomorrow Chayim. As long as they use it, it's theirs. Now I'm not saying you have to write that, but it's a good idea that when the person donates the talis to the shul, he's giving it to whom it may concern. There's an automatic hakna from the bailim or the shul to the user, and it becomes kulay shaloi. So this is the two nafkaminas, the two reasons, but I must mention, which is obvious, that before you make a bracha on Talis alcohol, make sure it is kosher. The Bialacha in Simon Chasif Tes, in his times, he writes about the Talis alcohol, it's matzi ma'oid, that it's not just seen better days, but it's not kosher. So you have to check, make sure it's kosher. We always advise people start counting the strings. A much more efficient way is check by the neck there, by the hole where the strings go into it. If any of them are torn, then talis is puzzle, because torn means a whole string, 1 of 4 is puzzle. So check there. If there are problems there, then don't bother checking the bottom. But basically, before you make a bracha, you have to make sure the talis is kosher. Now, of course, there's a beautiful warming some soifa. He says it on Masechta Sukkah that was very common until recently. We still saw this, that every kehila had a dalet minim for sukkahs, because people couldn't afford a dalet minim, they had guests, whatever it is. So the Chaseifa says, after a few days, your esrig looks more like a map than an esrig. It's multicolored, it's used. So he said, that's the yoifi, that's the hiddur of the esrig. So, avada. But when it tells his puzzle, that's not a yoifi. He was talking about something that's maybe lacking hiddur, so the fact that it was used by tens of Yidden gives it the hiddur. But at the end of the day, make sure the talis is kosher. Again, the analogy of a talis alcohol by tzitzit is like the dalet minim kahol. Every kahol has dalet minim. It becomes a built-in automatic matana amanas lahachzir. Now, we would wonder about a privately owned shul or a privately owned yeshiva. Now, even though by this shul, when the Rav makes Mav Malk, he says it's your shul and we're there for you and everything wonderful, but who owns it financially? The Rav or whoever the Rashiva, whoever owns the yeshiva. So then you don't have the regular din of shutfis. Just like the Paiskim say that Magen Avraham says, if you find an Aveda in a Beis HaKnesses, it doesn't belong to the Beis HaKnesses, because ein chotza leBeis HaKnesses lehegdish. You find an Aveda in a shul, it doesn't belong to the shul. But a private shul, there is a chotz. The only reason why the private person not kind of that the Aveda is because it's a chotz and mishtameres. But be that as it may, I saw Rav Sternbuch in Chelik Av, Lamed Gimel, Das Noit, B'chaim Kanievsky, Omed Reish and Gimel, both say regarding a yeshiva or a shul that indeed, if Lamaisa it's privately owned, so then you don't have a shutfis in it. But, and this is pashut, the second reason that we mentioned that it's there for you. It's an akna for the one that uses it. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to. It could be even a private shul. Once there's a user-friendly talis gadol, you make a bracha on it, and don't worry. Again, the best would be if the nadin would donate it. Almanas, it's there for anybody that wants to have it. It's an akna gemura almanas lahachzir. The next question is a big yisoid for other mitzvahs as well, and that is, someone is desperate. He comes to a shul, everybody's davening. He's late enough as it is. He can't go home. The gabbai, he can't find the gabbai or the shul's talis. Can he go to the bima, or wherever the people keep their talisais, take out the nicest talis and wear it? L'chayra, the bells start to ring for that one. Not only is this a problem of ksuscha, this is what the Gemara says, Sho Shamidas Gazanu. In other words, we say, I'm using it. The Chazal say, you're stealing it. Pam told me, his shver was a kluge yid, he told me. And once his shver saw one of the Einiklach was playing with a toy that wasn't his. He goes, where'd you get that from? He said, ich hab das gefunden. So Pam's shver said, Loi signoi, du sollst nicht gefunden. And as we conveniently repackage it, I didn't steal it, I found it. But that's gneb. But definitely, we say, I'm borrowing his talis. Chazal say, Shosh lamidas gazlin. You're not borrowing it, stealing. And there's a loch in Shulchan Aruch. It's a Gemara and a loch in Shulchan Aruch. So the question is, how do we deal with using someone else's talis? There should be a problem. Besides that, it's not ksuscha, it's gezela. However, there's a rush. And the same rush has three bumba yisoidis. Zok the rush, nahagu lisate, talis shulchaveirei, afilu b'lo yediyah. The minig, we use someone else's talis. Umevarech. Now the Rosh is so convinced it's mutter, could even make a bracha. Now again, using something if it's not yours, you could make a bracha. If you hold that aims of Isa, but here he's saying you're allowed to make a bracha because it becomes yours. How did it become yours? You're taking without rishus. There's no umdana if he's unaware of this whole idea. And this he's paraphrasing the Gemara in Pesachim Daf Daled. In other words, there's an umdana that a person is happy when you do a mitzvah with his chayfetz. And he says the only thing is make sure you put it back in the same place with the same zehiras. You have to make sure, because if you do it and you're careless and it gets ruined or dirty, you might not be yoytz to the mitzvah mafreya. You're making hashav ma'alya. We'll get to that soon. But here the Rosh says a double chiddush. You're allowed to use it without rishus. There's no issigneva because nichalei, and it's so much yours you can make a bracha. Now it's not only the Rosh, the Mukayos and the Chasitis Amud Yud Beis, the Smak and Simon Amal Aleph and the Hagoyis, and the Rabbeinu Yerucham all say the same yisoid. You could take any talis you want as long as you return it the way you found it, and we assume nichalei makes it yours. Now, Lamaisa, we have 4 Rishonim using the Svar of Nichalei. And this is the Mechaba in Siv Dalet. Mutta litel talis chaveiroi ulevorach aleim ubelvache kapel oisa imatzim mekupeles. You have to make an hashav ma'alya, which we'll get to soon. Now, the question is, how does Nichalei work? So one of my Rebbeim, Zochan would say, a mensch hat an oiske back in a heart for a mitzvah. In other words, if you say, can I use your sweater without rishus? So that's Shosh Lamidas Gazlanu, because you don't have rishus. He would have let, but he didn't. He doesn't know about it. But a mitzvah, a person, his heart is baked out. In other words, it's mamish as if there's a conscious das, I want you to do a mitzvah with my chayfetz. Now that's beautiful. No problem of Geneva, I understand. But how does it work as far as the ksuscha? If you take someone's dalad minim on the rest of Yom Tov without rishus, then I understand that nichalei works, because it's not gezela, because nichalei. So now it doesn't have to be lechem. Why not? But we're talking about ksuscha; it has to be yours. There's no umdan. There's no person to make an umdan. He doesn't know about your borrowing of his talis. So listen to this. Comes again the Magen Avram, Sivkat and Ches, on this mechab, he says, I have no problem. Lamaisa, it's not yours. I happen to be Yoitza, our favorite emergency hatch. You are now an Ein Mitzvah Oisa. You're like an Isha and Zman Groma. And therefore, Zok Magen Avram, you could borrow it and you make a bracha even, because that's what we said. So when you borrow someone's talis and he doesn't know about it, you're using it as nichalei, there's no gneva because of nichalei. What's the heter to make a mitzvah? Only ein mitzvah v'ois. Now this is not satisfying for two good reasons at least. Number one, your mitzvah is severely diminished. Because ein mitzvah v'ois is not as big as mitzvah v'ois. So you got to be a better investor and find a better mitzvah. But more than that, and this is the goddess of Kivega who paid attention to every nuance, you tell me the mechaba in Sif Hey that says you're allowed to make a bracha talis that Yishlam Midas, it makes a bracha. The mechaba holds like the Rambam that we don't say b'tzivanu, because the Maisa you don't make a bracha on ein zman grama for nashim. The mechaba holds you can make a bracha if you're potter. Nashim don't make a bracha. So how could he all of a sudden here hold that you make a bracha and ein mitzvah v'oisa? So this is the problem with this psak. Ein chanami is not gezela, but how does it become ksuscha? And Taka the Mishtabura and Sifkat Yudalid, for a different reason, says, don't take it without reshus and make a bracha. He says, better take it, don't have kavanah to be yaitza, and wear it just, it should look good. But you can't make a bracha when it's not yours, especially in the Mechaba Shita. Now, Lamaisa, Kivega on this, the Rechaim says, so what do you tell him to do? Take the talis, just wear it to look nice, so it won't stick out, and no problem, because there is a problem. What's the head to touch someone else's talis? This of Kivega's lomdus. Not for show and tell. So Kivega had everything figured out, mamish to the last T. Lamaisa, I did think, I hope it's correct, that maybe we'll take the oiske back in the heart a step further. Just like we said, you're a person who's sleeping in bed, he has no idea you exist. You take his talis, oh, I'm so happy you're using my talis. Do you know this heat? No. Do you know anything about it? No, but it's good enough. Why can we say there's an oiske back in the heart that if anybody ever needs my talis, since he's only yoitza, if it's his, I'm giving him an automatic amanas lahavza. Now, I didn't find this in the Rishonim, but the Torah is Chaim Seifa in Sifkat and Yud, and more specifically the Birchas Habayis in Lamed Zayin Ha'orach Gimel, he says, Azoivait, when you buy a talis, you have in mind Yenim. That if Yenim ever needs it, I'm giving it to him from now, I'm buying it for myself and for him. Whoa, beautiful, Avos Yisrael. But if you say that approach, then I understand why it works. Because just like the Umdana makes it that there's no Issa Gezeila, Hagam Shosh Lamidas Gazanu, maybe the Umdana works for this as well. And I'm basically, there is an automatic Hakno. Okay, I hope that's correct, but we're not out of the woods yet. Because the whole assumption is still severely lacking one basic element. And that is, what's Bechlal the Heta to use someone else's beged, anything for that matter? What's the heta? I shosh lamidas gazlanu. The teretz is nichel inish lo have a mitzvah minor overrides that. Now here, re'ez apella. There are Chashulchan in our sim and Sifir Alfi and Beis, who is from the Vardik, the Ben Ish Chai from Iraq, the Shulchan Atar, the Kamarna, and many others. But I'm showing how universal this concern is. Question today, in those days, today even more so, Tafshin Peivav, let's talk Tachlis. Is there an Umdana, people have no problem with you using their talis? I mean, sometimes a person, sweats a lot by davening, he puts talis over his head at all times, and, people I don't need his perspiration, his lice, his dandruff, v'chulu. Dr. Chashulchan, he says, that maybe they were talking when a person left the talis on the table, unfolded, he left it uncared for. No, maybe. But a person put his talis back in the tal zekel in the bima. What right do you have to take without rishus? He says, "Befer anan chazina that harbe makpidim is there." And then in Sif Yud Beis, he comes back to it. He says, "Lamaisa yesh chashas gezel shosh lamidas gazlanu and al zenam batzech berach niyetz Hashem." And better daven without a talis. That's how much the Chashulchan felt that the etzem heta is non-existent. Again, think about it. It's not like you're wearing a sweater, it's going over his head, and it's a hat, whatever the concerns are, but a person is a little more sensitive, especially after COVID. Some people are still very sensitive. The Ben Ish Chai says, we see Bizman Hazeh, that people are makbid, v'gam ani makbid ba'atzmi, that I don't let. The Shulchan Torah says, don't take someone else's talis. See, people are makbid. And Rav Moshe got a different context. He's talking about wearing a talis, carrying a talis on Shabbos. What's the heter? Why is it achana? So Moshe Agav gets in Chelik Hesim and Chav. He says, when is something mutta of nichale, if it's an umda gemura, that means it's not just the majority of people. It has to be all people. When is there an umda gemura that you can make it, you mutta use someone else's thing, when there's an umda gemura? So he says, no, if someone left the talis on the table, maybe he lets, but using a talis tam is only mutta if you could say nobody minds. Now I ask you, is the fact nobody minds? Say what you want, but this is a concern. The Tzitz Eliezer Chelik Yud Beis Siman Zayin, he also proves from other poskim that there's no nichale, and he adds something maybe perhaps cute, but it's very penetrating. He says, why were Yidden zoich to the mitzvah of tzitzis? Because Avram said, "Imichut atzroich noal." He quotes from Chaim Pelagi rather. Avram was so careful in Mamonis, he didn't take a shoelace or even a string that wasn't his. So we got the mitzvah of tzitzis because of the zehiris in Chayish Mishpat. It's up to Chaim Pelagi. You're going to take someone else's talis without rishus. And what about Chayish Mishpat? Today, doesn't exist. So this is why there are too many problems with borrowing a talis that without rishus of the bailim. Number one, first as we saw, is there really an umdana? Maybe there's an oiskebak in an umdana, maybe. Number two, the gezel aspect, which is even worse. And Mr. Brewer adds another point. Even if you hold it's mutta to use someone else's talis without rishus, but if you could be mavar it, then first be mavar it. Now, in the old days, it was hard to mavar it, but today it's something called a cell phone. If the talis has someone's phone number, give him a call, ask him. Manashach. But the Maisa, that's why it's not advisable to use someone's talis without rishus. Better look for a different talis shalkahol, ask from a yachid. Now, interestingly enough, using tefillin without rishus is the same heter. Shum Sadeshan says tefillin is a nichale. I hope that's still true today. But there, it's a much easier shayla. Because once by tefillin, or any other mitzvah, you get over the problem of gezel, there's no din of lachem, no din of ksuscham. The real problem is by dalaminim the first day, and by tzitzis, there's always a lachem, or ksuscham, whatever you call it. So that's why, regarding a talis, there's a chashash gezel perhaps, definitely a chashash of mitzvah. The Magen Avraham concedes it's only al eina mitzvah oisa, which is a pella. So that's why before you use someone else's talis, better get rishus. The question we began with was someone made a bracha on a talis, someone else's talis by mistake, and now lamaisa, the question is, was the bracha chal? Does he have to make another bracha? Can he use his talis? So this is a simple case of talis, people that took someone else's thing without rishus, is the gaz nechayr. We might say that this nichale, I hope that's correct. But why go on, continue wearing it? If your talis is right there, take off his talis, put it down, and take your talis. The question is the bracha chal mafreya as a bracha of atala because he had no rishus? That will say, first of all, miyakidin, we paskin, you're allowed to use it. Number two, eina mitzvah oisa, the bracha is chal. So the bracha would not be levatala, it was chal on the talis. The question is, you want to put on your own talis, and you need a bracha, because you made a bracha on talis A, not talis B. Although you made a mistake, but you had no das for this talis. So you can make another bracha, you want to wait till someone else comes and makes a bracha, have him moitziu, that's fine. Ma'isa shehoya, someone on the Ili Yom Kippur, he realized during Shemona Esrei, he shouldn't have checked, but he realized during Shemona Esrei he's wearing someone else's talis. And he said it was an agony. I'm thinking the Ili Yom Kippur, the most heilige hour of the year, and l'ma'anech ma'oishik yodeinu, and I have someone else's talis. So this we told him afterwards, of course. L'maisa here, there's a bigger heter than stam nichale, because this is the sugya of the in Baba Basra, and it's Chayish Mishas in Mekuf Lamed Vav, the Shnayim Shen is Chalfu b'gdeihem, if you swap with someone else's, so you're not allowed to use it without reshus, because you have his, he has yours. Unless we could assume that both know that it was exchanged, which is very common by tzitzis, and both have a vested interest that it should work. How is it going to work? I have his, he has mine. Teretz will make a mutual mechila and shalom al Yisrael. And this I saw the Birchas Habayis, Lamed Zayin Chav, if they both don't mind that he uses it until I get it back, we have a heta of Pashit, as if it was given over b'matana amanas lahachzir. So that was an easier shaila. A Bach in Yeshiva asked me the shaila, and it deserves to be clarified because it's a big yisoid. He davens for the Yomad Nebuchadnezzar Toich Shana, and he has to daven every day shacharis. Every day shacharis he puts on a talis gadol for an hour plus. Shiva davening an hour and a quarter. Could he make a bracha on the talis? Now, of course, we know a talis that a bacha doesn't. And most bacham don't wear a talis gadol for davening. The minigrad is a shver minigeps is a smach that says in the pasuk gedilim tasacha and sechika chishisha. Lamaisa Svardim do wear and Yekashidin wear. I got it so interesting enough. The Levush Mordechai in a tshuva, he quotes that heard from an aid from Ash that in their base medrash the Bachum wore a talis. This is Chelik Beis, Simon Beis, and Levush Mordechai, talis with an atif over the heads. But okay, I'm not changing Menhagim. But the bracha is, I'm wearing a talis anyhow for an hour plus. Why should I make a bracha on it? So Lemaisa, here we come to an interesting point that if you're wearing it l'shem kvoid hatzibur, there's more of a tzad not to make a bracha. Now, this is not so pashut. Let me clarify this. We hope one day to give a whole shir about this because there's so many different scenarios. But the Magen Avram in Siv Katan Vav quotes Yam Shel Shloima in Chul and Ches, Perek Ches Siman Nun Gimel, Im loiv shay la'alis the Torah, oy labar l'fnei ateva, einay mevorah. Zok the Yam Shel Shloima. Do you make a bracha when it's a Shem mitzvah? When it's a Shem kvoid hatzibur, it could be a duchening, an aliyah, a balkoira. You don't make a bracha. You're doing a Shem kavod hatzibur. No. But it doesn't stop there. Aval harosh, the halachas ketanis, mashma oy l'fnei ateva, mevorah, zok the Magen Avram. More so, the Magen Avram quotes a piskei toisis in menachos that if you mesate betalis, you make a bracha on it. So, Maisa, the whole concept of kvoid atziva being patim a bracha is machlokes shnuya. Magen Avram saw the Yam Shel Shloima, but found two rishonim not like the Yam Shel Shloima. So now it's a whole different story. Now, but I collected, if you should know, I collected a number of poskim from the Magen Avram, Ad, Chaim Kanievsky, Rav Wozner, that all say, put it on the Shem mitzvah, and also Shem Kvoid Hatziv, and make a bracha. But we don't need more than the Paisik Achrei, Mr. Bur and Siv Katan Yud Aleph. Kol Zeh, this day you don't make a bracha on a Feduchring Lamashal, a talis of an Ish Prati. But a talis shel Kahol, I feel loiv shirak la'avar l'fnei ateva, oy lalis the Torah, even for an Aliyah, you make a bracha. Because the talis shel Kahol was given for you to use it in any way you need it. And if you want to make a bracha, it's the amanas lahachzir. So it's not like we're ignoring minig. The minig seems to be in those days that he made a bracha when he did it l'shem mitzvah. Now I am aware that some poskim say don't make a bracha dafka, but here's the question: he's putting it on for an hour anyhow. So why can't he just have it l'shem mitzvah? Now, of course, he has to make sure the talis is kosher, number one. Number two, it's not Laila. If you wear it for mincha, when it's very suffix Laila, then don't make a bracha. When Lamaisa, he should make an atifa, we'll soon see about that. And the ik is, if he wants to mechaven l'shem mitzvah, that's much better. But Lamaisa, there is definitely a tzad to say that even though a bacha typically does not wear a talis, again, that's a minig, which some question. Now, we don't wear talis as bachrim, but it's nothing, no issa b'davar. Now, people quote or misquote, the Gemara says in Kedushin, Chavtes Mebeis, that a bacha, shlei nasa isha, lo hayam achase roishay. Afilu tamid chacham. So how could this bacha make a bracha on the talis? He's going to have to make an atifa, put talis over his head. We don't do that. But Zakt, the Gemara is not talking about a talis gadol. It's talking about a hat that's sort of like a hat of chashivas, like, the Svardish Gedolim wear some type of a special hat. So if it's done l'shem kavod, a bracha doesn't wear it. But for a bracha to wear an atifa on the talis is some type of an issa. Now, l'maisa v'chlal, the Magen Avram is talking a case where no one does it. But if he's wearing it anyhow for the hour plus, and there's no yuara that he's making atifa just to be able to make the bracha, then it doesn't seem to be a problem. Now, l'maisa, what I do think I'm sensitive to is when a bracha gets up in the yeshiva, that nobody else makes the bracha on the talis. He gets up before he gets aliyah and makes an atifa, makes a bracha. He's implying that, I'm smarter than you and you don't know too much. That's yuara. So if a bracha to get up for this bracha and put a talis on berabim, make a bracha on it, maybe taka, it's lacking kavod hatziba, maybe it's lacking yuara, maybe both. But if he wants to put it on in his room, b'tzina, and make a bracha on it and have a mitzvah for an hour plus, why not? Why should we take a ma'isa mitzvah? He's doing it anyhow. He's not doing something strange. I tell the brachim often, the Chazon Ish, the Heilige Chazon Ish, who is kol kula yira shemayim, kol kula diktuk adin, but he makes a point of writing, he says, you should be very, be careful. Tzarech lizor ma'oi, this is one of the letters. Don't do something that's meshunim. Don't do something that's different. Because a person does something different, he's leaving the misgeres of a tzibur. And he writes, Sarach zah ma'oid. So do things that differently we don't like to do. But if he's wearing a talis anyhow, he's not sticking out, and l'chayra there would be a tzati mekel, he can make a bracha. Now someone told me, but who said that advanim give it a talis to the kol for this bracha that Punkt is making a bracha on his talis? I said, why not? They're doing it to make concern. Now, whether this is the minig, I don't know, but if someone would ask me, he wants to do it to have the extra schus of tzitzis, a mitzvah for the hour plus, tavalah bracha. In fact, the Mishnah Berurah, the Bialocha, I should say, the Bialocha in Siman Samach, Siv Dalit, he has a problem. He says, if you put on a talis shel kahol, and you forgot to have kavanah to be yoytz to the mitzvah, then you move out to the mitzvah. You have a mitzvah in your hands, and you're not doing it. So how can we put on a talis for an hour and have a mind just l'shem kavod hatziba? Now, maybe taka, but if you're doing kavod hatziba, you're not mechav l'shem mitzvah, it's not a mitzvah. Ken zayin. But why go through the bother, all of that, for what reason? So I taka don't know. I would think again, not change the minik hamakom, do it in a private area, but if you do make a bracha, the fact that it is l'shem kavod hatziba is enough to make a bracha, don't forget. That's the Mishnah Berurah's psak, and countless gedolim. But if you're doing it l'shem mitzvah, avada and avada, the bracha would be a correct bracha. Let me ask you an interesting riddle. How is it shaykh, someone made a bracha, and what's it, talis today, and tomorrow it became puzzle? That doesn't sound very reasonable. How could a mitzvah become puzzle? Well, a check bounces, how does a mitzvah bounce? I'll tell you very poshut. So after Mr. Bruce, if cut in Yud Beis, the following. If you borrow someone's talis, he gave it to you, להחזיר, there's one very important precondition. He has to get it back exactly the way he gave it. He doesn't need it to be dirty or torn. Dr. Mr. Berurah, let's say one of the tzitzis, one string, tore off a part of it, small piece of it. Still kosher, l'chatchila. Dr. Mr. Berurah, sorry, you can't give it back as it is. You have to either fix it or buy him a new one, whatever it is, or compensate him, whatever it is. Dr. Mr. Berurah, why? Because it's not a manas lahachzir. And he says, oy bazoi, if you give it back as it is, you're not yoytz to the mitzvah. Now this is the Shulchan Aruch and Taf Reish Nun Ches Siv Dal regarding Dalad Minim. If you didn't give it back to him in a timely manner, or whatever it is, you didn't keep the Tanai, even if it's an oynis, then you're not yoytz to the mitzvah. As I state in Mr. Berurah. Yeah. So now, this is a beautiful riddle. But my next question is, this fellow Nebuch, his mitzvah bounced. So quickly he should compensate the person's nichalei, and then it's fine. But here's the next question. Let's say the tzitzit got torn, and Lamais, he didn't think of compensating him. The mitzvah bounced. How about the bracha? Does the bracha also become a bracha levatala mafreya? So Mishmur doesn't mention the word bracha levatala at all. The Piskei Tshuva says if you don't return it the way you found it, it's a mitzvah, it's a bracha levatala. Now, could be meken mechalik zayin, a pashta chilik. There's a famous ritva in chul and kuf vav amid beis. Someone washed for bread. Now, luck is you only make a moitzi if you can have a kebeya of bread. Going to the kazai, but a kebeya, like most paiskim. The person washed and thinking to have bread. He made a moitzi, the bread didn't taste good, it was too old, whatever it is. He wants to change his mind, reprogram, like they say, have a regular meal, make a bracha on the other foods, but no bread. So the ritva, but then l'mafreya, the bracha was a daim is l'vatala. So no. B'shas made the bracha, was the achiyah b'tzivanu? So that's it. The Helig Chasam Soif and the Tshuva in Yeridei Simon Chaf, Simon Shin Chaf, and Ebenezer Beis Harigal has a similar question. Someone, an isha or a man, whatever it is, took off a piece of challah, hafrasha, and put on the side to burn it. Then they put the rest of the dough in the oven, and they come out looking, where's that little piece of hafrasha? So little Yossi is smiling, says, Ma, that's a great thing. You left that piece of dough out of the dough. I quickly put it back in the dough before you made the braiding. So now you have more challah. And the mother shrieks. Now she has the whole challah is asa. Could be asa b'hana, could be chayim misvei shemayim. If there's the actual afrasha. I bottle, but how much is challah bottle in? 101, not in right. So what do? So the halach in Shulchan Aruch is you matir neder, so to speak, you undo the afrasha and start again. So what about the bracha? You're going to make a new bracha on the new batch. What about the old batch? There was no such afrasha. It was chal then, the bracha is chal. It cannot become ois bracha into bracha batala. So why should our case be different? You made a bracha, you wore the talis. Unfortunately, you're not careful in chayishimish, but it bounced. Why should the bracha bounce? So could be the chilik is in the other cases the mitzvah is not mitla toli. There's no amanas. If you don't follow halacha, so then worry about it then. You follow halacha, we say don't worry about it. But here it's amanas lahachzir. Just like the mitzvah is mitla toli, maybe the bracha is also. If you have any more information, please tell me. Question: someone gave you a talis to wear to shul, to take to wear davening on the way to shul. You're accosted by two big goyim. Give me that talis, money or your life. So you give him the talis. Okay, what could you do? The question is, are you mechuyev to pay for that talis? So this Kiva Ega, in our Simon, in Simon Yudalid, has this shaila. He says, technically, if you made it into a matana mas lahachza, then the halacha is, an oyin is a mas lahachza, yitakapota. But Zokta B'Kiva Ega, in this case that he was talking about, you asked the Bailam to use it. He said you could use it. Who made up Amanas Laharza, this Umdana? Chazal, which is very good. But you asked him to use it. What is your status? Shoyel. A Shoyel is Chayiv in Einzim. So even though we acknowledge that Chazal made an automatic Amanas Laharza, so then it's a Matana. And Matana Amanas Laharza, there's a Ptur Oinit, like it says in Chayshim Mishpat. But this, you made a shoyel. It doesn't override shoyel. It adds to shila a kula. But you're still back to a regular, ordinary shoyel. And shoyel is chayiv and oinz. I must leave you with one more shayla. This is a shayla, it's a story. It's dripping from Yerushalayim and inspiration and zehiras. In the Orchas Rabbeinu, the Mechaber was a Tamachocha, Muflig, the Shvaga of Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Mechaber of many Svarim. It's Chelik Amud Chav Gimel. He writes a story that happened with him and the Stipler. We are so enamored by Chaim, we forget what the Stipler was. He said, the Ram Horowitz, the Mechaber of the Sefer, said he couldn't find his talis and tefillin. It must have been stolen. It was just missing. So he told the Stipler, he said, I have a talis. It's in the Shemus. You could take it out. It's mine. You could use it. Okay, in those days, Shemus was not, you buried it. They kept it there. You could use it. It's kosher. Fine. 2 days later, the Stipler said, listen, I'm having a little reservation. I gave you the talis. Let me tell you the story and do what you want. I was by a bris. I was a sandik, and I was wearing my talis. The Aviyah Ben asked me, could you give the talis to this man? He's getting a kibud. He could wear it. So I said, sure. And I gave it. I told the Aviyah Ben, tell the fellow, I'm not Matana Mas Lahachza. So therefore it becomes his, so he can wear it as his. The Aviyah Ben just gave it to that person and didn't say a word. The person was a Amoritz, Stipler assumed, and just put it down the table and left. And then I picked it up because of my talis. Then I started having reservations. I gave it amanas lahachzir. He never gave it back to me. It's not mine. I can't be yotzim tzitz. It's not lachem. But then again, I told the Aviyah Ben to tell the father, that person. He didn't tell it to him. But then again, I gave it to him, but Tanai. So who said that Tanai doesn't work? So I decided I can't deal with this. I'm putting it in Shemus. But then a relative came from Russia who needed a talis. I gave it to him. I was soymech that it never went into effect. The amanas lahachzir. But then again, he said the fact that I gave it off. He says maybe taka, there's no problem. You can wear it. 2 days later, the type says, "Did you buy a new talis yet?" He goes, "No." Maybe you should. So he said, "But I make a bracha on my talis cotton and I'm moitzi the talis gadol." So the type says, "Every day you make a bracha on talis cotton?" No, just because it is shaila, it's also no good. Do me a favor, buy a new talis. So he have a mordika amanas lahachzir that would even prevent the bailam from being yotzim because it didn't come to fruition. So think about that. I got to talk to you all.
Shame Egan should tell like you be a shacharis, Smith of today's share. We would like to have the exclusive sponsoring a share. Please call Egan Share Talis 718-851-865 on the email ist@yeshiva.com. Rabbi side today the shul is having the annual appeal with adopt a koil that is sponsored at the drawing of the koil in Kiryat Sefer and Eretz Yisrael. The Rosh Koil, Shal Taisig is here in the hallway. Please be mishtatev by Yofa and Avacheling and Abotas Torah, Limud Torah of the koil. Van Anja met elkaar schema, zo is bogen de zaak is hetzelfde voor je hibben ter met de snema de neug half is aan zitke jaagdel ter bejaarde. Everybody, I know the share is over, but we're going to borrow some time for the Sikkim and the borrowed Talis.
Just let's just chazor. We learned today, Be'ez Hashem, a talis gadol and a talis cotton has to be ksuscha. We'll say the word lachem, a borrowed term, but has to be yours. That's the given. There's no chiyuv on a talis she'ula, toich lamid. We did speak about a case which is very negeya. If a person is potter from talis from tzitzis on a talis she'ula and he puts it on anyhow and could make a bracha, so then we had it's an eina mitzvah oisa and he could say v'tivanu. But in essence, a beged that doesn't have tzitzis, the mashal afrak, that she'ula is not chayiv and tzitzis, you can wear it, and that's why the purim custom you can wear the tuxedo without tzitzis, because that's the ptur of either she'ula or shacharis or both. Now, we also saw that you bought a talis mitzuyetzes, which means a regular talis cotton or gadol. So then not only are you allowed to wear it, but you can make a bracha. It's not yours. There's an umdana that he gave it to amanas lahachzir. So you have to take care of it very carefully and return it the way you got it. If lamaisa, he gave it to you stam, as a malbush to wear, and you decide to wear it l'shem mitzvah, or he gave it to you for kavod tzibur purposes, for duchening, and you want to wear it l'shem mitzvah, if there's no umdana that he knew that you want to wear it l'shem mitzvah, then it doesn't work, and then you can't make a bracha. That would be a regular talis she'ula. If you need a talis at any time, talis gadol or katan, first we'll make sure the person's not a mafunik, that's obvious, and then ask him, could you please give it to me with a matana manas lahachzir, make it a kinyan on both ends and give it back to him, and he's takakoin it because now it is his. If there's a tzarechim, I think if today people know this halacha of automatic, so that's why it's best to speak out, beferish, talis cotton. Again, you want to borrow someone's talis cotton or gadol, you're giving it to me on a manas lahachzir condition. A shul's talis has two milas. Number one, it's a shutvis, so it is yours, and number two, it's given just for you to be that automatic amanas lahachzir. That's why in a kehillah that's very big and you don't have a shutvis, a guest who's not part of the kehillah, or as we said also, in any other situation that it doesn't work, the concept of automatic, but lamaisa, If it was given b'tanai originally that it should be there for someone else, avada, it works even though you're not part of that kila, or you don't have a bailus in this talis at all. A shoyel, that a shul that talis has to be kosher, check, make sure it's kosher. A privately owned shul or yeshiva, there might not be a shutviz, but we have the second svar that is an aldas kain, it was given. Nichalei, the inish mevitzamaine takes away shol shalai midas, but we had a problem how to take away the chsaron of ksuscham. We hope there's such an umdana that he has a oiske back in the heart to give it to anybody who needs it. I hope that's correct. But definitely we had the main problem is people are makbetei on talis, not that someone should not wear it without rishus. So I would definitely be wary about borrowing a talis without rishus. Better take a talis of a shul or a yachid. If you took the wrong talis or you swapped talisais, the bracha was chal, but try to get your own back. But until you get your own back to yourself, we have a heta of neschalfu but dvar mitzvah. A lamaisa, as we said, that the bacha who wants to wear, anybody who wants to wear a talis l'shem mitzvah beside l'shem kavod, have a mind to make a bracha, have a mind it should be l'shem mitzvah, make an atifa, and then l'chari the bracha is chal. I forgot to mention, when someone wears a talis at night, l'mashal mikra Megillah, or maariv on Shabbos or Yom Tov, what's the best talis to wear? So Mishnah spells this out, and so does the Shar Ephraim. Mishnah is in Tafkuf Bayal Siv Kat and Vav. Don't take your own talis, because it might be chayv, because it's a beged yoim balayla. Don't even take the kol's talis, take the tzibus talis, and this way it's take a yachid, someone else's talis, and then it's a vadei shol. The question, what we mentioned, if someone damaged the talis, he has to pay for it, because it's a shol, and we left with this shaila about if the bracha is also levatala when he did not make an hashavah ma'aliyah.